Welcome to the Barrett channel. A warm welcome to all our regular viewers and a warm welcome to any new viewers there. Today we're going to be discussing some Huawei business, and I've got Alex here from Reporterfy Media joining me. Hi, Alex.
Hi, everyone, and welcome from my channel as well. And thank you, Lee, for having me on the program today. We're going to talk about, well, once again, Huawei is in the news. It shouldn't surprise anyone, but things are getting very interesting.
Yeah, so just a few days ago, the British government made a decision, or actually reversed a decision that they'd made a few months earlier to ban Huawei from the telecommunications network. Now, this is really interesting because the first thing I'd like to say is that for the last sort of 15 to 20 years, the UK have been pretty okay with having a lot of Huawei equipment in their telecommunications networks. But all of a sudden, it's a big security problem. And it's also interesting that a couple of days after they made the decision, Mike Pompeo from the US came and visited the UK. I'm sure to give Boris a bit of a pat on the head. But there's a massive, I see a massive downside to this in that the first thing, it's going to delay the rollout of 5G in the UK by some considerable length of time. The UK government is saying 2 years, but we all know when the government mentions a time frame, it's always way off the mark. So it'll probably be a lot longer than that. It's also going to cost huge amounts of money, billions of pounds in additional costs to do this. And, so I think the telcos are pretty unhappy about this. But one thing I sort of want to point out, for a number of years ago, what was BT? They're now, I think, an organisation called O2. They won a government contract to renew the communication systems for the emergency services, the police, fire, ambulance, etc. And they started building out that system with Huawei equipment. And to date, it's about 3 or 4 years behind schedule. And it's somewhere between a billion and £2 billion pounds over budget. And funnily enough, the government are going to let them keep all the Huawei kit in that installation. Which just seems a bit odd to me.
Yeah, and to add to that, if they're looking at this 5G as, a security risk, we have 4G, we have 3G, and a lot of this hardware worldwide, not just in the United Kingdom, is Huawei's hardware product. And I'm not sure how they're marrying the software issue where they feel that there is an issue and a hardware isn't Huawei just providing the material to implement antennas, kind of like the hardware infrastructure and all the monitoring, at least from what I've been reading and researching, is that these products are manned by the telecommunication company themselves, or if you have a security, let's say a government agency that needs to get into them, they'll either go 2 routes. One, subpoena for the information, or number 2, government has their ways of also collecting data. So that's where I'm very confused on if they're going to go after the 5G that's not even really there. What about 4G and 3G?
Absolutely. I mean, it's really interesting, this thing, because the UK have actually got an agency it's a joint thing between Huawei and the GCHQ, which is kind of the government sort of security monitoring organization. And they set up a lab to test all Huawei equipment before it went into the network in the UK. And they've never found anything. And also, you just mentioned that governments do get hold of information, and they actually do. And I mean, you've only got to look at the sort of dossier Edward Snowden came out with a number of years ago, and pretty much companies in America and the UK could get access to pretty much any data they wanted to. And in fact, in some cases, they had a direct route into the servers of some of the companies.
So what is interesting about, how you mentioned Edward Snowden, and he had to flee. I believe it was Hong Kong, right? He had to flee Hong Kong and find a safe place to tell his story. and he ended up in the transfer area in Russia. Now, for some of the viewers that aren't aware on how transfer areas work, and Lee and I have discussed this before, it's kind of like a no man's land. You're not technically on the soil of that country, and you're not technically on the soil of the other country. You're kind of in no man's land, and there's actually movies made about it. The Terminal, I think, with Tom Hanks. So, to speed this story up, is Edward Snowden was there waiting for proper access to get into Russia, and so he could seek political asylum. What's interesting is that one of the senior executives of Huawei, the daughter of one of the largest shareholders of the company, Meng, was detained in Vancouver. And it's interesting in Vancouver, Canada, how they describe this, how the investigators and the lawyers have described this. This has really hit the paper in the last week here. So I'm going to run you through the scenario. She's boarding a plane, transferring to Mexico as her final destination. She comes through Canada. Immediately, the Canadian Border Patrol security are knowing that she's coming off that plane. Now, she's supposed to be in the transfer area, but they've managed to get her into the, we'll call it, arrival area, where she's questioned. She's taken into secondary. Now, secondary in Canada is where they want to do more thorough search of your baggage and luggage. She gives up her mobile devices. They request that she gives up access to them. They read her the rules of the law. This is the Canadian Border Agency. They copy down her passwords. There are rumors, and some publications out there have said that these devices were connected to the internet for a brief time. It might not sound long to you, but data text can be easily, ripped off within seconds.
Very quickly, yeah. That's right.
The devices were, compromised. The passwords were then handed over to the Americans. She then went through and was admitted into Canada to then be arrested by the what we call the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. This whole procedure, no access to lawyers, being detained, no access to lawyers, being detained, devices being checked, codes, and then being told that she faces extradition to the United States. This is very alarming. Canadians, anybody who's traveling, should be very, very concerned, because this is the identical situation of Tim Cook getting on a plane. Let's say Tim had to go to a seminar, maybe, I don't know, in Singapore, for example. So let's say he was catching a plane. He was going via Vietnam to Singapore. The investigators, let's say the Russians, want to question Tim Cook, so they have an extradition for Tim Cook. They want to charge him with something, and now Tim Cook would have to sit in jail or house arrest in Vietnam for a few years. I don't think that would happen, Lee, if it was an American or anyone from the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand.
Absolutely.
I rather doubt that would happen. So what's interesting about this indictment is, I'm reading a really interesting article by the CBC in Canada here, and they're going into detail on how all this kind of went down. And we'll put a link to this story in the description of the video. But they're saying that HSBC instead, back in 2012, HSBC was sparring with the U.S. regulators, and they paid $1.9 billion fine to correct the steps of the banking business and to avoid new violations. That was in regards to money laundering with the Mexican drug cartel. So, and previous Iranian sanctions. Now, it's more interesting in how they're trying to pin this on Meng is that there was no theft of the company. There was no theft of customers. There was no theft of any government agencies. There was no theft of the bank. All they're saying is that the bank could have used a different way to wire money. As you know, people send through IBANs, people send through SWIFT, and a lot of people don't realize this, but it's a technicality. And HSBC took that and they said, okay, Meng was saying, we're very transparent. We know about SkyTel, and I believe it's SkyTel. Let me just double check.
Skycom.
Yeah. Skycom. And, even in the dossier that they were saying to the government, we've been very transparent about what we were doing. The bank decided to route the money through, U.S. wires, and
Yeah,
if
and
they
they
would have
didn't
used
have to do
chaps,
that. Yeah,
they
they
didn't
didn't
have
have
to
to
do
do
that.
that. Yeah,
They didn't have to do that, and this is the technicality they got to arrest Meng on. Now, I've read the indictment. I have. It's very easy for someone to come up with the term conspiracy. It's quite one of the easiest things to actually charge someone with, and that's what they use when they really want to go after a couple of these financial institutions. Even if you didn't do something, even if you intended, or we felt there was intention, or we felt that there was an intention to conspire, that's enough.
that's
And
right.
that's what they're trying to bring her down there on, is conspiracy and fraud. And we know, and her legal team knows, that this isn't going to hold up. I don't know how long this charade's going to go on, but look what they've done to this company, Lee. They've
Yeah,
thrown senior management in jail, threatened 50 to 75 years imprisonment. You got the UK government following the footsteps of the Americans, slamming the door. Mr. Pompeo is on a world tour. I call it his Huawei Destroy World
yeah,
Tour.
yeah.
I mean, how much more
Well,
is this company going to be able to take?
yeah, it's really interesting because with it's now coming to light through the court filings that it doesn't appear that America gave they withheld certain statements and things that Meng had made to the presentation in Hong Kong. So it seems as though the Canadians took the Americans on their word and actually didn't really look into the evidence as deeply as they maybe should have done. And on top
Yeah.
of that, it was even, I think it was the Canadian Secret Service even sort of wrote before the arrest that they felt the arrest was highly political.
Yeah, this is, you're talking about
Yeah,
CSIS here, and CSIS is one of our our agencies in Canada. They're one of our we'll call it the kind of like NSA slash FBI kind of together, and they knew internal documents. They knew this would put shockwaves around the world, and they're right
that's
on this. This
yeah.
this is
I
a
think it's part of a bigger picture to really constrain Huawei. I see it as though the China have got something that America haven't, and they're obviously a bit sore about that. I think the reason is you look at, and I think we've got a video we can actually show about how Huawei invest, whereas
yeah.
some American companies they've took the profits, they've lined the pockets of the shareholders, and there hasn't been enough investment. You had some big telcos in America, AT&T and Bell. And they could have easily had 5G, but they didn't invest.
Hmm.
Whereas Huawei, year after year, they've invested huge amounts of money, and
You know,
unfortunately, they've beat America at the game.
you asked me this question, or we get this question asked to both of us all the time, and usually when we're having a show is, oh well, Huawei is owned by the Chinese government, and what is interesting is Huawei decided to actually be very transparent about that. They have a video up, and I think you're going to play it for us.
Huawei has been repeatedly accused of being owned or funded by the Chinese government. Here are the facts. Huawei is employee-owned. 96,000 current and former staff own 100% of the company. That leaves exactly 0% in the hands of the Chinese government. Of course, ownership is only one way to fund a company. Let's look at the other ways. Cash gifts. Yes, Huawei does get some government subsidies for doing R&D. From 2009 to 2018, that money amounted to 0.3% of Huawei's sales. Without the decimal, it's 0%. Low taxes. Tech companies often get tax breaks for their R&D spending, and so does Huawei. Huawei spends billions of dollars in R&D every year. The standard corporate tax rate in China is 25%, but as a tech company, Huawei pays only about 15%. In the US, the corporate tax rate is 35%, but the US Bureau of Economic Analysis reports that most companies pay only 16%. Some famous ones pay much less than that. Does the Chinese government hand cash to our customers? Okay, Chinese government agencies offer loans to some Huawei customers abroad. Customers must repay that money, so it's not a gift. And besides, the countries where our main competitors are based also offer export financing. The fourth and last option would be low-interest loans from Chinese government banks. Well, we don't use bank loans a lot. And in 2018, only 25% of our loans were in Chinese yuan. The numbers vary by year, but roughly 3/4 of our loans are from foreign banks. And if you make a weighted average of the interest rate on all our loans and bonds, we pay more in interest than others in our industry. What you just heard isn't made up. Since the year 2000, our financial figures have been audited annually by KPMG, one of the world's most respected accounting firms. And recently, we also had a finance professor from Columbia Business School in New York produce an expert opinion of our sources of funding for an official filing with the U.S. Federal Communications Commission. The cash generated by our businesses is actually our main source of funding, the expert found. We sell a lot of excellent products, so money is coming in constantly. We could get by without any other source of financing than our sales. Next time you hear someone claim that Huawei is state-funded, check the facts behind the allegations. There might not be any. And if you want to learn more about who we are, check out our website.
So, that's an interesting video, Lee. That video shows that it's quite transparent. And also, if we can, if I don't forget, we'll put the link in the description below on how the company is broken up in steps, how the employees, it's in even greater detail. And they had KPMG actually help them with that. So here's a company that, once again, one of their senior managements has been put under house arrest. Governments all over the world, well, the Five Eyes and the United States are trying to take this company at its knees. You've got being told that they can't sell product. They're being told that they can't import chips. They're being
this is a really interesting point, Alex, because it's not only that the US have stopped them buying American chips, but they're also telling other countries they can't supply to them if those chips have any use of American equipment in the manufacture. I just find it unbelievable that America are able to exert this much pressure, really. I just...
Yeah, it's amazing. And you hear this thing is due to national security. Is this why we can't do it? Or an executive order. So if a company has a lot of patents, it's leading the world on technology, and you want to try to slow it down, why not? Let's throw the senior management in jail. Let's tell everybody on a road show not to deal with these guys. Let's tell them that they can't deal with chips. They can't import pieces for their mobile phones. And then it gets even better. When you think that that's the end of it, it's not the end of it. And I'll give you an example here. I have two phones here, two Huawei phones, okay? This is the Huawei, I believe it's called. Let's see, where's my package here? I've got my package right here. This is called the Huawei P30 Lite, okay? Pretty damn good phone, all right? Got excellent specs, and price-wise, unbelievable. So this phone was selling quite well, and Huawei handsets are selling tremendously well worldwide.
They are,
People like them. People like them. Well, this phone here is one of the last phones that Huawei is allowed to have the Google Play Store on. Their new flagship phone, this is a Huawei Mate 30 Pro, fantastic, beautiful camera, cannot have the Google Play Store on it because Google was told you can't give them a license. Now, that's another way of them trying to basically take a company out. And I'll just show you. This is Huawei's app store. And this is, once again, American pressure. I know people say sometimes you guys talk about America too much, but let's face it. Indictment, senior management, world tour by the Secretary of State not to deal with this company. Calling up Google and saying, guys, you can't give them licenses to run the Google Play Store. And they thought, I seriously thought that they think that that should be enough to put a fork in it and it's over for Huawei. But they've underestimated this company.
Yeah, I think so, because I know they have a lot going on with their app store. They've got all the big apps on board. There's a few they still need to get sorted. And actually, Google petitioned a lot against that decision because Google can see the writing on the wall,
Yeah.
Huawei have a sort of pretty big footprint in a lot of the major markets. If you look at like a lot of Asia, Africa, they have a big part there. And I also think you'll have other Chinese phone companies who are looking and thinking, are we going to be the next target if we get too big? And I think that it wouldn't surprise me if some of these other phone companies don't start adopting the Huawei App Store, and then Google are going to have a major competitor on their hands. And I know for a fact that Huawei have just signed a deal with a huge mapping company, together with the Chinese satellite system, which is a competitor to GPS. Incidentally, it's more accurate than GPS.
More razor sharp, more razor sharp.
It's accurate to a really small distance. They're going to have some apps, navigation and mapping apps that are really going to be impressive. And I just think that America are going to regret in the sort of medium to long term what they've actually done, because I think Huawei are not going to just sort of let this happen. They're going to fight back, and I think they've got a lot of sort of bullets in their armor,
Yeah, and I think they got the balance sheet. Okay, back to the Google Play Store and the Huawei Store. Well, I'm finding most of my apps on this store already, and we're talking some big names here. The traditional apps, the Vibers, the WhatsApps, the Booking.coms, Facebooks, all those things are on there. And if they're not on there, they're on their way of being on there. Now, you think about it. The average person says, well, you need Google Apps to survive. Well, you also need 1.4 billion market to actually help you survive. And in that 1.4 billion, you've got some neighboring countries that have some pretty hefty population. You've got Vietnam, you've got Thailand, you got, the emerging markets, you got, Laos, you have India, which is not far off there. And if you look a little more north from China, you've got Russia, who's got a big market. So you start adding up this, and so I know where you're going with this, Lee. You're going to be talking about Africa now, because this is very important with the Huawei story as well, and China.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the African market. China invested a lot of money into those countries. I know there'll be a lot of people out there who will say, "Oh, it's China are creating a debt trap for them." Well, I think you've got to look at it when they borrow money from the World Bank, which is American backed, then it's a loan. But when they borrow money from China, it's a debt trap. So it's all this double standard again. But regardless of where the the growth's coming from, Africa and Asia are going to be the big economies in the future. I feel to a point you've got the American market, the European market, somewhat phone handsets a little bit saturated. So all the growth won't be there in the future. The growth is going to be in these emerging markets. China with its 1.4 billion people, they have a massive middle class market. And here, I see the Huawei stores absolutely rampacked. A new phone comes out, the Chinese want it. They, even if they've only had the previous one 6 or 8 months, they want the new one. And it's. I just finished. It's really strange when I first come to China. It was the Apple stores that were chock-a-block, and the Huawei stores not so busy. And now I'm seeing the complete opposite.
That's an interesting point, because not only do they have the capability of getting app developers on their stores, you can see it, it's evident, the app developers are coming to the stores. But what is also worth mentioning is that when they get into these markets, they also help the telecom companies build their networks. And we're starting to see some of these emerging markets have better connection than some of the Western countries out there that take shots at them. So you might be arriving in Kenya and you would think, well, I should be concerned about my mobility thing. And the Kenyans might even have a 5G network before America even rolls it out.
Yeah, well,
At this rate.
Thailand have got a good
Yes.
5G network, haven't they? Yeah,
Yes, and
it's
it came out in October, November, and quickly people started to say, "Yeah, we got to go." And it was funny that you mentioned that. I was here with a friend who said, "Well, I should just go down and buy a 5G card now if the speed's good." And I said, "Yeah, go get one." And I said, "But what kind of phone have you got?" He says, "Well, I got the newest Apple." And I said, "Well, it's not 5G."
that's right.
What are you talking about? It has to be 5G. I said, it's not 5G. So you kind of got to look at this even deeper. Why didn't Apple come out with a 5G phone?
Because the 5G is not anywhere really in any presence in the States. And it was really funny because one of the mobile networks in the States, they tried to convince the customers they got 5G. They changed the little 4G logo on the top of the phone to 5G. And interestingly, a lot of the States, they're saying it's 5G, but it's kind of like a turbo 4G.
Turbo 4G, yeah.
It's not true 5G. There are some places that have got true 5G, but it's quite minimal. And if you contrast that to China, China will have something like 600,000 base stations installed by the end of August now, in another month's time. And they're on that target. And then I think by the end of the year, they've got it's about 1 million base stations countrywide. I mean, in the cities right now here, it's great 5G connection. A little bit rural, it's still 4G, but they're massively rolling it out on an unprecedented scale. It's incredible.
And this takes infrastructure money. I mean, can you imagine telling the Chinese they had to rip out their whole network and put in something new? I mean, that's just adolescence there. I mean,
it's just stupid.
It's crazy. I think the important part here is that we have certain countries that are behind. Now, China's been taking shots on this company, and they can retaliate. And
they can.
There are a lot of companies very, very exposed in China that don't want any problems. We have Ericsson, we have, I guess, Nokia, Siemens. They all want part of this 5G network. And
absolutely,
funny enough,
they do.
China has allowed them in there to actually do part of the networks. So this could backfire. I mean, even Apple is very exposed
to China. Yeah, they are.
This could change the whole thing. I mean, overnight, Apple could have a problem. And, we would say, wow, the Western countries say, oh, how dare China do that? Well, look what's happened to Huawei. I think we've given you some very, very factual information in this dialogue that you and I have had. Is that the management put him in jail? They've tried. She's under house arrest. They tried to knock out the App Store. They tried to knock out the chips, the screens, whatever. Probably going after him with patents as well. So I don't know where's the end game here.
I really don't know at this stage. I mean, I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens after the US elections, because I think a lot of this attack in China and Huawei specifically is all down to Trump having to look tough on China to appeal to his voter base. But what would be interesting if you could leave down in the comments what you guys think. Let's get some discussion going in the comments. So leave down below what you guys think.
And if you guys have any other stories that you want to share, also let us know about that. What I have done over the last month and a half is put extensive amount of research into this Huawei story because I find it extraordinary. This is a darling company on China. And another threat, I think, what is happening on the other side of the water in North America is they're starting to see apps come out of China that are very popular. And some countries are trying to have these apps actually banned, so that's not going to get the consumer. Anytime you tell a consumer that they're banned from a product, they're going to find a workaround, or they're going to buy a phone that can get it. So be careful what you wish for on that one.
I mean, I think, this ultimately backfire on the stage, because I think
Yeah.
it will just make Huawei stronger and more determined, and they will grow from this, I feel.
Well, Lee, it's been a great chat, and for
Yeah,
everyone
it has.
watching, please subscribe to both channels, or resubscribe if you've been unsubscribed,
Yeah.
and leave those comments below. And don't forget, it's important to share this video throughout all social media. This is a time when, if you believe in prosperity, you believe in companies that are trying to break new boundaries, instead of them being stopped and trying to be cut off by government agencies, now is your time to use your voice and to start talking about this topic. It's very important, and it can impact you as well. All right, well, thanks again from me, at Alex at Reporterfy Media, and over to you, Lee, to end off the show.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Check out Alex's channel. He's got some great stuff coming up and some great stuff on there already. You know what we do on our channel. Take a look at any videos you haven't already. But as always, for now, take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.